Eagleton. I am the Senior Vice President of Media and Programming for the Dallas Cowboys.
You know, you were here speaking at the conference. What would you share if you were giving a speech at Morehouse or TSU for young graduates to understand about the opportunities of being in the sports industry as a professional?
The first thing I would tell them is I would give them some very blunt feedback on it is a very, very tough business. It is a hard business to get access to, particularly for people of color, and it's a tough business to even stay in sometimes. But if you're driven and you're motivated and you're talented, then you can get there. You can achieve what you want to achieve. I think building relationships are vital because ultimately, for so many people, their ability to get into sports was about knowing someone who could refer them to ensure they get seen. For every job that we post to the Cowboys, we may get hundreds, sometimes thousands of resumes. The ability to be seen really exists a lot of times by someone referring you, so that word of mouth, or someone who has respect that says your name and says that you would be a good candidate to take a look at. That would, in the very least, get you seen. So I would say really, really focus on relationships, build relationships. This is a tough business, and it won't always work out, and you kind of have to get comfortable sometimes with hearing no. But at the end of the day, you keep working at it, and if you're talented and you work on your skills and your abilities, I think you can succeed there.
You're at one of the premier franchise brands in the NFL. Can you share how important for others watching excellence is a part of the brand of the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, it's one of those things where at the Cowboys, our goal is to be number one in every metric there is. And that goes from, pushing to be number one on the field, which, those results sometimes are what they are, but that's always the goal. And all the way to being number one in business, and even in my area in media, our goal is always to be at the top of the league. I tell my team that we're not competing with the other NFL teams, we're competing with ESPN. Our goal is to be in that level. Now that's a hard thing to do because they cover so much ground that we don't cover, but that's the goal, right? And you always want to set goals that are well beyond where you think you can go to see where you ultimately end up. And so it's just a part of our culture at the Cowboys. We want to be first. We want to be the best. Excellence is a part of what we do. It's one of our brand pillars, and that's just how how the organization really teaches employees to pursue their own job as a part of the bigger objectives of the company.
You gave wonderful insight in terms of being a leader and understanding, being willing to take the fail and accountability. Can you share for those who weren't in the room how important it is as a leader to know that you got to put your hand up?
Yeah, I tell my team all the time, don't worry about taking the big swing and trying to do things that are different and big, because if everything works out, then what I'm going to say to everyone that will listen, including my boss and the Jones family, is, man, this person did an outstanding job driving this project. If things go wrong, I'm also going to be the one that raises my hand and says, man, I missed it on this one. I thought this was going to be better. I thought we would have these things, but ultimately I missed it. It's my fault. And so I think what that does is, being a good leader means that you're able to do that for the folks who report to you. And that frees them up to be able to do their best work without fear. And really, I was listening to some music the other day, and I was hearing this artist by the name of Lucky Day. I heard an artist by the name of Lucky Day mention, when he was talking about goals, he was saying, really, goals are nothing different than fear. As you accomplish one, you're basically looking for the next fear. You're looking for what can you overcome. And I think that's kind of how you have to think about it. But it becomes easier for the people that report to you to overcome those fears and be unafraid of trying to conquer fears if they feel like they have some support. And so that's what I think good leadership looks like, is taking away that fear and allowing people to really optimally work at the highest level.
You also talked about the fact that discipline plays a role. Can you share for those individuals who may not understand how important it is to be disciplined as a professional in this business?
Yeah, discipline is nothing more than forcing yourself to do what you really don't want to do, but you know you have to do. And by the way, that's a part of every job. And I don't care if you're in sports or out of sports, that's a lesson that you need to learn and that you need to practice. I spoke during the session about the concept of really training yourself in the way of discipline. For me, it's in running. And and I train for half marathons. And the goal of that is just to make every training that I schedule to show up, right? And to achieve the things that I set out to achieve. The race is only, that's the thing at the end that you do, but it's not what I celebrate. What I celebrate is in that 16 weeks when I had 4 days a week of training, was I willing to get up and do that every one of those 4 days that week throughout a 16-week period to ultimately get to a certain goal. And I think that's the part of training yourself in the ways of discipline so that it shows up in your everyday life, so that when you are tired and you get home from work, or you're showing up for your kids and your spouse in the way you need to, that's discipline, right? There are those things that are well beyond your career, well beyond sports, that really challenging yourself from a discipline perspective makes you the best version of who you can be.
For those young people working and hoping that they can be in an excellent group and a brand like the NFL and the Dallas Cowboys, can you share 3 things that you know as it relates to the 3 people who should be in their lives?
I'll speak from my own perspective. I think God is one, because I think faith is vitally important. I would say, again, for me, my spouse, my wife, she's been with me through all this. She was with me before I got to the Cowboys. Actually, she was a Cowboys fan before I ever started working for them, and I was not a Cowboys fan when I started working for them. But my spouse, because, and I'll actually say my spouse and my kids, because they are the ones that have to sacrifice so much in order for me to do what I do. My kids have never known a Thanksgiving when Dad didn't have to work, because the Cowboys play every Thanksgiving. But because that's a part of what we do, and they never really bucked it, they come along, and they're not real football fans, but they come along and they're engaged because that's a part of what our family does. And so having a spouse and kids that ultimately will buy in and support me, I think is extremely important. And I guess if I was going to say the third one, I would probably say some sort of mentor, somebody that you can look at that does things the right way. And that doesn't necessarily have to be in your career field. It's just having someone in your life who you can emulate, that represents something bigger than just your career, that represents how you want to live life, that you can then seek counsel from when you run into those situations in life, which we all do, that are challenging, that you've never experienced before. I would say that person becomes a really invaluable resource.
Last question. If you were going to give a speech at a TSU, a Prairie View, a Morehouse, a Howard, or the University of Texas, what would the title of your speech be, and what would you challenge the next generation to do?
Oh man, that's a tough question. Probably the title of my speech would be something around discipline and creativity, because I feel so strongly about those 2 attributes, and I don't think they are necessarily specific just to sports and careers in sports. Now, my background gives me the ability to talk about sports, which just engages people, because a lot of people like sports, right? But I think those 2 things are things that I think transcend career, and they really are about being a good, thoughtful person. And so I'd probably talk about those 2 things from, again, the same perspective I talked about it during the talk here, about being disciplined, finding ways to challenge yourself from a discipline standpoint, and also being creative and challenging yourself in that way, because I think so much of life is about problem solving, and problem solving is all about creativity. And so the more creative you are, the better you will be at solving problems and solving them quickly and efficiently. So I would probably talk about those 2 things.
You're leaving out the fact that you are a drummer.
I am a drummer.
When you're drumming, and when you think about drumming, name your favorite drummer and what it does for you when you take 30 minutes just to be musical.
Oh man, when I was growing up, Steve Weckl was my favorite drummer. Recently, I've gotten connected with some drummers online. I call him Coach B, but his name's Brandon. But there's some phenomenal drummers out there in the space these days, and I've gotten connected with them online. And I actually am being challenged by them, because they kind of take videos I produce every week of the drumming that I'm doing, and they give me new challenges, and so it really pushes me. So they've become my favorite drummers, just because I love getting tips and tricks from them on how to become a better drummer.
What does it do for you when you're there taking that break to be creative?
Yeah, for me, it's about, number one, just being able to think freely. One of the things that I've learned about in this latest iteration of my drumming is that I think being able to play freely is a skill that a lot of drummers, the best drummers, have. they aren't thinking about what they're doing. The creativity just flows. And so for me, sitting down to drum also is about exercising my ability to think freely and just let the creativity flow. And that helps me again in my creative works at work, being able to not try to think so hard about how to be creative, but let those creative ideas just come to me. I get a lot of those while I'm out running. So I think exercise is a good way to create the environment for creativity. But yeah, drumming, just sitting down, it's about feeling free and being able to just create as I create and just enjoying that space. I'm Derek Eagleton. You're watching Rolling Out the Business Exchange.